The truth of the matter is there is no big fights at 47 for Bud Crawford. Now, Bud Crawford has made it completely apparent that he's after the big fights. And if he can't get the big money fights, I'm sure he'll settle for the legacy because he made it also apparent that he wants to be 3 times undisputed. And I believe him when he say that. It's a bad boy. But it ain't no big fights at 47. So if you clicked on this video looking at the title, when you really look at it, what is there left to do? Let's talk about it. What up, YouTube? Big T.O. Heavy Bad Boxing TV. Man, get your big goofy ass in here and hit the bag. Hit that like button for your boy. That helps the channel. You know I appreciate that love. Shout out my gang. D1 Merc 1 ML21 Skinny JT Black Jesus, my guy Troy Jack, Q1 Rebel Life Modern King Letitia YK World Tyree Celestine. Big shout out Sean Don Punch Drunk 913 Boxer. I see you, boss, for sure. Now look at the landscape at 47, y'all. Come on, man. Let's be real. Look at the landscape at 47. Ain't no big names no more with the old guards moving out. Bud and Spence was it. Bud already said he's not fighting Keith Thurman. Danny Garcia's at 54. Looks like he's knocking on 60 to take a shot at Iris Landy Laura. If Bud was to keep the belts and defend Undisputed next, who would it be against? Who? It would have to be Boots Ennis, right? Again, not giving Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman would probably be the last name to hold some water for real at 47. Now, I like Boots. Yeah, I got to understand. I think it's the consensus amongst the hardcore fans that the Boots era is about to start real soon. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sick about this the Ortiz kid, man, with this rhabdomyolysis bullshit. More than likely, he's done at 47. His body just can't continue to be right at 47 because that was going to be a big build up for Ortiz and Jaron Ennis. But that would be the only name that would make sense for Bud Crawford. And yeah, if Bud was willing to take somewhere between, I say 7 to 10 million to fight Boots Ennis, probably not the payday that he's looking for, especially with all of this newfound fame. I think the numbers will show that Bud Crawford has somewhat crossed over and will, do some really big pay-per-view numbers. And I say that because, and I know, having a social media following doesn't completely translate to people that's going to actually buy your pay-per-views, but it's an indication, right? When you looked at Earl Spence, over 1 million followers on social media. Now Bud Crawford has surpassed Earl Spence, or at least on Instagram from what I've seen. And I think that's an indication that his pay-per-views in the future will continue to do well, right? And I do believe that's a fight that the hardcore fan base would support, to do that 250 to maybe 300K if he were to fight a Jaron Boots Ennis. And maybe that's wishful thinking, I know y'all will get with me in the comment section and tell me what you think that pay-per-view fight would do. But I just, the clout that Bud Crawford has gained from arguably the biggest fight in boxing in the last decade, I think he's crossed over a bit. I do think those pay-per-view numbers are going to do a big jump from his last outing against like a David Avenesian. I think he crossed over a little bit. Now I would love to see that fight, but I don't think it's realistic. But when you think about Bud Crawford, he's X so many people out. When you talk about a Danny Garcia, which I think would be a great fight at 54, a Keith Thurman would probably garner the kind of payday that he would want, 10 to 15 million to fight Keith. When you think of, those two alone, I thought made bigger fights for him because, again, these are names. Bud Crawford needs a name that people know to for his next fight, for sure. And then when you look at Jermell Charlo and Tim Tszyu at 54, that has to be next. Because if Jermell Charlo doesn't fight Tim Tszyu, you got to understand this was a done fight. You know what I mean? This was a made fight before he hurt his hand, and then Canelo Alvarez came in the picture. Now, WBO scripts Jermell Charlo. Tim Tszyu has the belt now. He's defended it once. That could be undisputed or a two-time undisputed champion for Jermell Charlo. So that fight makes all of the sense in the world. Even though I know Jermell Charlo called out Bud Crawford next, I think he would be scripted again if he fought Bud Crawford by the IBF. So if he wants to keep that status at undisputed at 54, he would have to fight Tim Tszyu next. So that would be another fight that's Bud would just be waiting on. Nobody else for real at 54, unless he went right into a rematch with Earl Spence. Now, I told you guys that this rematch wasn't going to happen immediately, and I don't think it has anything to do with Showtime ending its sports department and no longer going to be hosting the boxing. It just didn't make any sense anyway. But to garner the kind of payday that Bud is looking for right now in his last few fights, you have to consider Earl Spence. Even though I know he wanted to step around Earl Spence to try and see what other fight he can get, this is probably the fight he ends up with because there's nothing else, and Earl Spence is the name. And then you got a lot of Earl Spence fans who just kind of want to see what Earl Spence can bring to the table. Now, the Canelo Alvarez talk, you might as well cancel Christmas on that. Would I love to see Crawford versus Canelo? Hell yeah. You know what I mean? Of course we won't see that. That's a big fight. Probably would be the biggest fight right now, in my opinion, in the sport of boxing. Canelo Alvarez, Terence Crawford. I think that's the biggest fight you can make. I think they easily do 1 million pay-per-view buys, in my opinion. But I don't think it's realistic. I think more than likely after this Andre Benavidez fight, whoever wins that probably fights Canelo Cinco de Mayo. Or at least that's wishful thinking too. I would like to think so, but it's Canelo. You never know. He might end up fighting somebody completely off the radar. You know what I mean? Or go after the other Charlo brother. But Bud versus Canelo, I don't think so. I just don't. I don't believe that happened. And if you scratch out Canelo off the list, if you scratch out Jermell Charlo and Tim Tszyu off the list, if you scratch out Boots off the list, if you scratch out Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman off the list, who else left? There's no big fights at 47. You basically saying he's not gonna fight Boots. You might as well vacate that. You know what I mean? And position yourself at 54. Maybe he can find an opponent at 54. You guys let me know in the comment section, who do you believe Bud fights next, or who you would like to, what do you feel like is most realistic for Bud Crawford next? And if he comes back to 50 or to 47 to actually defend, which I don't think so, that's why I'm making this video, who would it be against and what makes the most sense? To me, if you home state at 47, you gotta fight Boots. Again, I know it's not the biggest payday that he wants, but it makes all the sense at 47, and I think it's the most intriguing fight if you're not gonna fight Keith Thurman. All right, that's all I got for y'all on this one, man. Big T.O. Heavy Bag. You know who I got with me, man? Talk to him, Roger.
Most motherfuckers don't know shit about boxing.